My in-laws said I was just a phase and wouldn't last with their son, so I skipped Thanksgiving, and what I did next left them speechless at the wedding. Okay guys, I'm still shaking from this whole thing. Like, I've told this story to my best friend, my therapist, even my hairstylist, and every single one of them had the same reaction. There is no way they said that out loud, but oh they did, with their whole chest, at a brunch table while sipping mimosas. Okay, let me back up a second. I'm not just someone's bitter ex or jealous girlfriend. I've been with Ethan, my fiancé at the time, now husband, for 5 years. Through job losses, moving apartments twice, his emergency appendectomy, and even a 2-month break where we both needed space to figure things out. Spoiler, we came back stronger. So you'd think by year 5, after he'd introduced me to his entire family, lived with me for 3 of those years, and literally proposed with a custom-made ring, that I'd be considered permanent, respected, not a placeholder. Nope, because apparently to his mom I was still just that girl he's dating, and to his dad, a phase. So here's what happened. Ethan's parents, Mitch and Nancy, yeah, they're exactly as country club as those names sound, invited us to brunch at this fancy little French place that charges $19 for a fruit bowl. They said they wanted to catch up before the holidays, which honestly was weird. We'd just seen them 2 weeks earlier for Ethan's birthday dinner, but I thought, okay, maybe they want to talk wedding stuff. They hadn't seemed thrilled when we got engaged, but maybe this was them trying. We show up, they're already seated. Nancy is wearing this high-neck silk blouse like she's about to deliver a TED Talk, and Mitch has on a blazer over a Nike golf shirt. Total retired CEO vibes. We say our hellos. Nancy air kisses me like always, and I can already tell something's off. Like there's a tightness to her smile that says, I rehearsed this. And Mitch keeps clearing his throat like he's about to give a speech he doesn't believe in. We order. I get eggs Benedict because I'm too anxious to eat anything heavier. Ethan's chatting about his new project at work, trying to keep things light. And then Nancy leans forward with her little "I'm being so sincere right now" face and goes, So, have you two really thought about the long-term implications of marriage? I blinked. Because what? Then bless him goes, yeah, that's why I proposed. He laughs a little, but there's tension in his voice. He feels it too. Nancy presses on. It's just, marriage is a lot of work, and sometimes infatuation can feel like love when it's really just a phase. And then, and I swear I'm not making this up, Mitch looks directly at me and says, No offense, sweetheart, but we've seen Ethan go through phases before. We just don't want him to rush into something he'll regret. Bro, did I just hallucinate that? Or did a grown man, who's met me dozens of times, who's eaten in my home, who hugged me at our engagement dinner, actually call me a phase? And the worst part? Finn didn't say anything. He just looked down at his plate, like he didn't know what to say. Or maybe he was trying not to blow up in public. I don't know. I sat there frozen, staring at my eggs like they were gonna offer me emotional support. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Nancy smiled like she just delivered some profound wisdom. And then, as if that wasn't enough, she added, We just think you're very different from what Ethan usually goes for. You're very independent, very opinionated, but not in a bad way, just, y'all, tell me you're judging me without saying you're judging me. I excused myself to the bathroom and stood there for 10 minutes, just breathing, staring at myself in the mirror. And I swear in that moment I saw something in my own face shift. Like I'd spent the last few years trying so hard to be accepted by them, dressing a little more neutral when we visited, talking less about politics, smiling through the backhanded comments. And for what? For them to call me a phase? I came back to the table and said I wasn't feeling well. Ethan immediately offered to leave with me, and we did. In the car, I told him exactly how that conversation made me feel. And to his credit, he was mortified. He said he was sorry, that he'd talked to them, that they were out of line. But here's where things got complicated. He did talk to them and they doubled down. They told him they loved him too much to watch him make a mistake. That I was too headstrong. That he needed someone softer. I'm not a memory foam mattress, Nancy. I'm a human woman with boundaries and ambition. I told Ethan, I'm not doing Thanksgiving with them this year. Not after that. That was the moment everything shifted. Because skipping Thanksgiving, apparently that was disrespectful. Suddenly, I was the one creating drama. I was keeping Ethan from his family. I was making everything about myself. Oh babe, if they thought skipping Thanksgiving was dramatic, they hadn't seen anything yet. 'Cause what I did next left them speechless. And it happened at the wedding. Before I get into how I turned their little phase theory upside down, I would like to know, what city, state, or country are you watching from? Drop it in the comments below. And if stories about putting doubters in their place make your day, hit that like button and consider subscribing so you never miss the next one. Alright, back to the story. Fast forward a week after brunch from hell and everything is tense. Ethan's walking around like he's balancing a bomb on his head. His parents are texting him concerned messages every other day. And me? I'm just trying not to scream every time my phone pings. I'll be real with you, part of me wanted Ethan to go no contact for a while. Not forever. Just long enough for them to realize how deeply they messed up. But he couldn't do it. He said he understood where I was coming from, but they were still his parents. I wasn't asking him to choose. I just needed him to have a spine. Because here's what nobody tells you when you're in love with someone whose family sees you as optional. You start questioning if maybe they're right. Like maybe I am too much, maybe I am too loud, too direct, too unfiltered. 'Cause when you're constantly tiptoeing around people who think you're the wrong fit, you start thinking, am I actually the villain here? But then, and this is the plot twist that almost made me throw my phone, Nancy called me. Me, directly. I wasn't gonna answer. I stared at her name for a solid 10 rings. But something in me was like, screw it. Let's see what this woman has to say. I pick up. She starts off in her fakest, most syrupy voice. Hi, sweetheart. I just wanted to clear the air a bit after brunch. I think maybe things came off harsher than intended. You think? But I stayed calm. I said, okay, I'm listening. And y'all? I should have hung up, because what followed was 10 full minutes of her explaining how Ethan is sensitive, and he needs someone who can center him, and how conflict is hard on his nervous system. I kid you not. She said I was too passionate and that Ethan needs calm, which, translated from Nancy speak, means someone who won't challenge him, call out microaggressions, or have actual opinions. I told her very calmly, Nancy, I love your son, but I'm not going to turn myself into a doormat to fit your version of who he should be with. You know what she said? That's exactly what I mean, sweetheart. Everything's a fight with you. And then she followed it up with, I'm just saying some men outgrow fiery women. It's not personal. Grow fiery women. That's when I hung up. And I didn't say a single word to Ethan about the call for a full day. I needed time to cool off and figure out if I was spiraling or if this was genuinely as gross as it felt. Spoiler, it was worse. I finally told him what she said. And he went quiet. I was like, are you seriously not going to say anything? And he goes, and I swear on my sad half-eaten pizza, she didn't mean it like that. Bro. I stared at him like he just sprouted 3 heads. You're defending her? No, I'm just saying she grew up in a different time. She doesn't always say things the right way. I cut him off. Ethan, she called me a phase. She told you I'm too opinionated. She said you might outgrow me. That's not saying it the wrong way. That's saying it loud and clear. And that night, that was the first time we actually fought about it. Like raised voices. Me tearing up. Him pacing the living room like the floor would give him answers. Because here's what he finally admitted. He's scared to stand up to them. He doesn't want to rock the boat. He was raised in a family where appearances mattered more than honesty, where not causing a scene was practically a religion. I told him, I'm not asking you to scream at them. I'm asking you to protect me when they belittle me. And he just looked at me, exhausted. I'm trying. And I said something that still rings in my ears. Trying doesn't stop the bleeding, Ethan. Because every day that passed with him staying silent, I felt more abandoned. And the fact that he wouldn't be skipping Thanksgiving with me, that hit hard. I wasn't asking him to burn bridges. Just sit this one out with me. Spend the holiday with my side with people who actually wanted us together. But he said, and I quote, if I don't go, it'll confirm everything they think about you keeping me away. So I told him to go. And I stayed home. I made mashed potatoes and green bean casserole alone. Watched the dog show with a blanket over my legs and a knot in my chest. And you know what the worst part was? They posted a photo on Facebook. One big smiling family photo around the table. Guess who was missing? Guess who wasn't even mentioned in the caption? Me. That's when I knew I wasn't welcome. They didn't see me as Ethan's future. They saw me as a glitch in the system. Something temporary. Something to wait out. So I made a quiet little vow to myself that night. I didn't make Ethan pick sides, but I started planning something. Something for the wedding. Something subtle and powerful. Something they'd never forget. Because if they thought I was just a phase, I was about to become the main character. So I basically went full don't start none won't be none mode. I wasn't going to beg for a seat at a table where I wasn't welcome. I wasn't going to force Ethan to cut them off either. But I made one thing very clear. If I'm marrying you, I'm not marrying your enablers. And yes, I called them enablers. 'Cause that's what they were. People who smiled to my face while slicing me open behind my back. The people who thought opinionated was an insult, like I should just nod and smile while they rewrote my whole personality to fit their little upper-middle-class fantasy Barbie mold. So I took back control the only way I could. Through the wedding. Now a little context. We were already a few months into planning when all this started. Nothing was booked yet, but we had a short list of venues, guest count rough draft, even a Pinterest board called Chaotic Neutral Romance. Don't judge me. It was very candlelit and moody and honestly iconic. We sat down that weekend to go over the guest list again, and I told Ethan, calmly, respectfully, but very much not asking, your parents will not be giving speeches. They will not be doing a reading, and they will not be part of the pre-wedding prep. Ethan nodded. Didn't argue. Didn't flinch. He just said, okay, progress. Then I said, also, they're not sitting at the head table. Now that gave him pause. He was like, babe, I get it, but that's gonna cause a scene. I looked at him and said, Ethan, they already caused a scene. I'm just rearranging the lighting. He laughed. It was tense, but it was real. And then he said, okay, where do you want them? Near the back, by the bar, with your uncle that always falls asleep during speeches. Petty? Maybe. But deserved? Abso-freaking-lutely. And then came the big one, the actual guest list veto power. See, in most weddings, the couple splits the invites down the middle, right? Like, 100 guests equals 50 from your side, 50 from mine. Except Nancy had been trying to suggest names for weeks. Friends from her garden club, her yoga teacher, a retired dentist named Gary who apparently watched Ethan grow up. Like, ma'am, I don't even know Gary. So I sat Ethan down and told him point blank, we're doing this wedding our way. That includes the guest list. No one gets added unless we both say yes. He agreed, didn't even hesitate. And that was the moment I realized he was growing a spine. A little wobbly one, sure, but it was forming. The next few weeks were blissfully quiet. I avoided all contact with his parents. I focused on cake tastings, flower samples, and obsessively stalking wedding TikTok. I even started therapy, because I knew if I didn't work through the resentment now, it was going to swallow me whole by the time the vows rolled around. And honestly, it helped. It reminded me that I'm not crazy for setting boundaries. I'm not selfish for wanting to feel safe on my wedding day. And I'm definitely not a phase for existing outside some step-forward wife fantasy. Then, just as the dust started to settle, Nancy emailed me. Subject line, wedding details. My stomach dropped. I opened it like it might explode. It was 3 paragraphs long, written in that passive-aggressive corporate tone that says everything except what it really means. She wrote about hoping the day would be inclusive for everyone, and how certain traditions shouldn't be overlooked just because we want to be modern. She referenced her wedding 3 times, and then she dropped the real bomb. I've already contacted the church to confirm availability, since I know Ethan always imagined getting married where his parents did. Girl, no, absolutely not. We had already booked a venue, a gorgeous little outdoor space with string lights, a tree canopy, and 0 pews or priests in sight. Ethan never even liked church weddings, and yet here she was planning one. I called Ethan and forwarded him the email, and to his credit, he called her. Immediately. I didn't hear the conversation, but I did hear his voice through the office door, and it was the firmest I'd ever heard him. No, Mom, that's not your decision. She is my fiancé, not an accessory. If you can't respect our choices, you don't need to be there. Bro, I was in tears. Not because I was sad, but because for the first time ever, he chose me out loud. And that was the beginning of what I now call the great unclenching. 'Cause after that phone call, Nancy and Mitch backed off. Not fully, but enough. I didn't get a real apology, but I got space. And sometimes that's the only closure you get with people like that. So wedding planning moved forward. We finalized the guest list, the dress, the vows, and that's when I decided it was time to plan my moment. The one they'd never forget. The one that would leave no room for doubt. Okay, so now we're about 6 weeks out from the wedding. Invites are sent. The seating chart looks like a crime board with string. I'm trying not to have a meltdown over centerpieces because apparently eucalyptus doesn't look bridal enough to some people. I will die on that hill. And while most brides are stressing about dress fittings or playlist drama, I'm sitting on my couch with 3 open Word docs, rewriting my vows. Not because I didn't know what I wanted to say, but because I knew exactly what I wanted to say. And it was not subtle. Let me explain. Originally, I had this sweet Pinteresty vow draft all planned out. About how Ethan makes me feel safe, how he taught me patience, how his love reminded me I could soften without breaking. It was beautiful. Tear-jerking even. My best friend cried reading it. But after the whole phase incident and everything that came after, I realized something. My vows weren't just for Ethan. They were also for them. Not directly, but they were going to hear me loud and clear. So I started over. And this time, I wrote what I really wanted to say. No, I didn't stand up there and drag Nancy and Mitch. That's not me. But I wove in little truths, barbed with love, laced with steel. Things like, you never made me feel like a temporary chapter. You treated my love like a whole novel. When others questioned us, you doubled down on us. You never asked me to shrink, you held space for me to expand. And my personal favorite, you didn't pick me because I was easy. You chose me knowing I come with volume, fire, and a refusal to be half-loved. Yeah, I said that. In a wedding vow. And don't worry, I softened it with some humor. Talked about our first road trip where he got food poisoning and I had to Google, how to keep your fiancé from passing out in a Waffle House. Talked about how he always orders the worst thing on the menu but eats mine anyway. It wasn't just a clapback in disguise. It was us. Raw. Honest. Real. I showed the vows to my best friend and she legit said, if that doesn't make the in-laws squirm, I don't know what will. Mission accepted. Now, here's where it gets wild. About a week before the wedding, Ethan's mom texted him. Apparently, she wanted to surprise us during the reception with a slideshow. Of what, you ask? His childhood. Just Ethan. Not Ethan and me. Not our engagement. Not even our mutual friends. Just solo Ethan growing up like this was his bar mitzvah or something. She said she was going to include clips from his favorite memories, including his high school prom date, not me, his lacrosse trophy moment, he quit sophomore year, and oh yeah, footage of her giving a toast at his college graduation. Ma'am, this is a wedding, not a solo career retrospective. Ethan politely shut it down. He was like, if you want to make a speech, that's fine, but no slideshow. And it needs to include both of us. Guess what she said? This day is about celebrating Ethan's journey. I almost laughed out loud. He told her no. Again. And she responded with 3 paragraphs about how I was overstepping and how the wedding was being hijacked. I didn't even flinch. Because at this point, I'd already planned my surprise. See, one thing I hadn't told anyone yet, not even Ethan, was that I had added a special section to the ceremony, right after the vows, right before the kiss. I had arranged for our officiant, who's a close friend, to read something short but powerful. It was called Why We're Here, and it was basically this. We are here today not because love is easy, not because it's simple or smooth or universally accepted, but because it is chosen, daily, fiercely, and sometimes in the face of silence. These two are standing here not as a fairy tale, but as proof that love can be real even when the world tries to minimize it. When I tell you this little paragraph shook the entire reception, but I'm getting ahead of myself. The day of the wedding finally arrives. Everything's perfect, like Pinterest exploded in the best way. Muted colors, garden lights, tables with name cards and zero drama. Well, almost zero, because the in-laws? Oh, they showed up with faces tighter than Botoxed eyebrows. Nancy wore beige like she was in mourning. Mitch gave me a hug like he'd rather be hugging a porcupine. Neither of them made eye contact during photos, and they both sat through the ceremony like they were attending a tax seminar. But I didn't care, because when I stood across from Ethan, nothing else existed. And when I read my vows, when I said that line about not being half-loved, I caught Nancy blinking fast, like she'd just realized I was never going to apologize for being myself. Not now, not ever. And then we kissed, and the officiant stepped forward. Time for Why We're Here. That's when it happened. The moment that left them and half the guests completely speechless. So, the ceremony is already giving everything it needs to give. The vows were raw. The music is on point. Ethan's crying softly like a Disney prince, and I've somehow managed not to ugly sob through my mascara. And then, our officiant steps forward. His tone shifts slightly, like he's letting everyone know this next part is not just for the couple. He looks out across the garden, at the guests, at our families, at us, and he says, "Before we move forward, there's something that needs to be said. Not because it's traditional or required, but because it's true." Dead silence. Even the birds went quiet, I swear. And then he read the words I'd written, slow, deliberate, clear enough to leave no room for misinterpretation. We are here today not because love is easy, not because it fits into every mold, not because it always looks the way people think it should. We're here because love is a choice made fiercely, especially in a world that sometimes tells us we're wrong, that we're too loud, too emotional, too different. This love isn't silent. It's not small. It's the kind that holds your hand when others let go, the kind that walks with you when others whisper behind your back. We're here because two people chose each other. Even when it would have been easier to walk away, even when the whispers got louder, they chose truth, they chose loyalty, they chose each other. By the time he finished, the garden was still, like still, stunned silence. I looked out over the crowd and locked eyes, just for a moment, with Nancy. She looked caught, like the room had shifted and she wasn't ready for it. And I didn't smirk. I just held Ethan's hand. They had tried to reduce me to a phase, to a footnote, to a girl he'd grow out of. But I stood there in a wedding dress in front of everyone they respected and said, without saying, "You were wrong. I was never a phase. I was the one, and I wasn't going anywhere." After the ceremony, a bunch of guests came up to us saying how powerful the speech was. One of Ethan's aunts teared up and whispered, "Thank you for saying that out loud." Even people who didn't know the backstory felt the weight of it. And Nancy? She didn't say a word. Not during the reception. Not in the photo line. Not during the first dance. But when it was time for toasts, she got up anyway. Y'all, I held my breath, because I had zero idea what she was about to do. Was she going to hijack the moment? Make it about Ethan again? Try to backpedal with some passive-aggressive poem? But no. She clinked her glass, took the mic, looked around for a second and then said, "I've always wanted what's best for my son. I realize now sometimes what's best doesn't always come in the package we expect. But watching you two today, I get it. You're not just in love. You're a team. And I see it now. No deep confession, but it was enough. 'Cause sometimes the most powerful revenge is not dragging someone, it's outgrowing the box they tried to put you in." That night I danced like I'd earned it, laughed with my whole chest, took photos where my smile wasn't forced. And Ethan? He never stopped looking at me like I was the only person in the room. You'd think that once the vows are said, the cake's cut and everyone goes home drunk on champagne and sentiment. That's it, right? Happy ending. Roll credits. But no, because sometimes the real story starts after the dress is packed away and the thank you cards are half written. Let me tell you what actually happened after our wedding, and how the whole phase label kept creeping back in ways I didn't expect. So we get back from our honeymoon, this gorgeous, chill week in Santorini that honestly healed parts of my soul I didn't know were frayed. Zero family, zero drama, just wine, sunsets, and a man who looked at me like I was the main event. But then reality returned, and along with it, the in-laws. Nancy texted Ethan a week after we got back, not to say congrats again or so happy for you. Nope, she texted, "Let me know when you're free to grab lunch. Just you, I'd love to catch up." Just you, not us, not the couple she just watched get married, just Ethan. He showed me the text, and I'm not gonna lie, it stung. I wasn't mad he wanted to see her. He's allowed to have a relationship with his mom, But the fact that she still refused to acknowledge me as part of his life, that wasn't lunch. That was a statement. So Ethan, bless this man, responded with, "Sure, but my wife will be joining too. We're a package deal now." Her reply? "Oh, I just assumed she'd be busy. Girl, it's 2025. Stop assuming things about women you don't respect." Anyway, the lunch didn't happen, but the passive-aggressive moments kept coming. At one point, Mitch, who'd been silent through most of the wedding chaos, decided to resurface. He called Ethan randomly one afternoon while we were cooking dinner and asked if he could swing by with something. We said sure. He shows up with a leather-bound photo album. No explanation, just a stiff half-smile and a "figured you should have this." So we open it later that night. It's a scrapbook of Ethan's life. Every school photo, every soccer team, every summer trip to Tahoe. Even pictures of him in college with his ex-girlfriend, whom they loved, by the way. And y'all, there is not a single photo of me. Not one. We've been together for 5 years. Vacations, holidays, birthdays, and I'm not even in the margins. I didn't say anything. But Ethan, he closed the album and said, "This isn't a gift, it's a revision." And that's when I knew he got it now. Like, really got it. He called his dad the next day. Said thank you, but no thank you. Told him we wouldn't be keeping the album. Not out of spite, but because it didn't reflect our real life. He didn't argue. He just said, "Suit yourself," and hung up. That was the moment Ethan finally stopped giving them the benefit of the doubt. Because for years, he had told himself his parents were just awkward with emotions, or bad at showing support, or trying in their own way. But now he saw the pattern. The erasure. Condescension wrapped in politeness. The refusal to see me as anything more than a guest in his story. And so we drew some new lines. Not no contact. Not drama. Just boundaries. We told them, gently but firmly, that until they could treat both of us with respect, not tolerate, not fake it but respect, they wouldn't be involved in our future milestones. No invites to housewarmings. No Sunday dinners. And definitely no drop-ins with curated photo albums. The fallout? Quiet. Uncomfortable. But honestly, kind of freeing. They didn't fight it. Didn't suddenly turn into the parents we always hoped they'd be. They just faded into the background. And for the first time in years, Ethan and I felt like we could breathe. 'Cause here's the thing nobody tells you about getting married. You're not just choosing a partner. You're choosing your team, your front line, your home base. You're who shows up when it all falls apart. And if your team includes people who think your partner is temporary, they're playing for the other side. So yeah, we lost a few family traditions, but we gained peace. We traded forced smiles at holidays for road trips with friends who actually want to be around us. We celebrated our first Christmas as husband and wife, watching movies in sweats, eating takeout, and laughing over the fact that Nancy sent Ethan a gift card, but addressed it to just him. Again, he gave it to me. Said, "She must have forgotten you exist. Good thing I never do." Mic drop. So fast forward 1 year. One full, messy, gorgeous, weird, healing, hilarious year of marriage. We just moved into our new place, this tiny but perfect townhome with squeaky stairs and a backyard that barely fits a grill. We call it the escape pod because honestly, feels like we launched ourselves out of whatever orbit his parents were still spinning in. And for the most part, we were good. Like really good. We cooked together, adopted a cat, started a shared notes app for weird dreams and grocery lists. It felt like peace. And then came the wedding. No, not ours. His cousin Mallory's. Now Mallory and I actually got along. She was younger, a little chaotic, always the one showing up with a broken heel and a story to match. But she was sweet, and she'd always treated me like family even when Nancy didn't. So when her wedding invite came in, I was excited. Until Ethan said, "So, I got a weird text from my mom." And I'm like, "What now?" He holds out his phone and it's this. "Just a heads up, we weren't sure if +1s were included. So we RSVP'd for you solo. Hope that's okay." Excuse me? You RSVP'd for your grown son to a family wedding without his wife. At that point, I didn't even have rage left in me. Just one long, exhausted blink. Ethan was furious. He texted Mallory directly, explained what happened, and she was mortified. Turns out she had invited both of us, and his mom just decided I wouldn't be coming. Manipulation level, Olympic. Mallory insisted we both come. Said she'd fix it. And she did. But now, the stakes had changed. Because this wasn't just another family event. This was the first one since our wedding. Since that speech. Since the whole "you're just a phase" nonsense got publicly buried. And I knew Nancy and Mitch would be there. And I'd finally be facing them again in a room full of extended family who probably had opinions. So I prepped myself. Mentally. Emotionally. Fashion-wise. Wore this stunning deep green jumpsuit, you know, the kind that makes you feel like you're starring in your own music video. Hair? Flawless. Makeup? Subtle but savage. Attitude? Unbothered. We walked into that reception like a power couple from a rom-com that actually communicates. And the second Nancy saw me, she blinked. Twice. Like she thought I wasn't going to show. She gave me a tight smile. Said, "Oh, hi." I smiled back. Surprised? "Don't worry. I'm used to it." She blinked again. Didn't say anything else. Mitch? Did a small nod like I was a security guard checking his name at the door, which would have been fine. But then came the slideshow. Yes, Mallory also had a slideshow, and it was fire. It showed baby pictures, family trips, awkward braces, prom disasters, and then a montage of couples. Everyone in the family, a whole reel of love stories. And smack in the middle, picture of Ethan and me, from our wedding, standing in front of our officiant, smiling at each other like the world couldn't touch us. And guess who submitted that photo? Mallory. She told me later. I wanted it in there because it was real. You two fought for your story, people need to see that. When that photo came up, a few people actually clapped. Not a huge applause or anything, just this tiny moment of warmth. Like the room recognized what we'd been through, what we'd built, what we still were. And Nancy, she looked down. She didn't say anything for the rest of the night, knowing that the girl she called a phase had become the woman her son built a life around. So we get home from Mallory's wedding. It's late. My shoes are off before I hit the hallway. Ethan's already raiding the fridge for leftover cheesecake because wedding cake is a lie and he knows it. And I just sit down in the quiet, in the aftermath of everything. And I realize something. I'm not angry anymore. I'm tired. I'm proud. But I'm not mad. 'Cause somewhere between that awful brunch, the skipped Thanksgiving, the fake smiles, the vows, the speech, the silent slights, and the photo in Mallory's slideshow, something changed. They didn't win. And more importantly, they didn't break me. I think for the longest time I thought I had to prove something. Prove that I was worthy. Prove that I belonged. Prove that I wasn't a placeholder or a rebellion or a mistake. But looking back now, they were never going to give me that approval. 'Cause it was never about me. It was about control. About image. About their son making a choice they didn't curate. I could have been a literal Disney princess and Nancy still would have found a way to side-eye me for being too theatrical. And the wildest part? Their resistance, all the pushing, the she's not the one, the she's a phase crap. It actually did the opposite of what they intended. 'Cause it pushed Ethan closer to me. Every time they tried to minimize me, he saw more clearly who was really in his corner. Every time they made him pick a side with silence or slights or just family tradition, he learned how to speak up. So yeah, they built my era. Every time they doubted me, I got stronger. Every side comment, every exclusion, every backhanded email, that was fuel. Fuel to be louder, bolder, more certain of the space I took up. And here's the kicker. I don't even want an apology anymore. Don't need Nancy to grovel or Mitch to hand me a scrapbook with my face finally glued in. 'Cause they already lost something more valuable than control. Access. To us. To our story. To the inside jokes, the late night calls, the real, messy, beautiful version of their son's life that they still don't fully know. And I'm done trying to be palatable. I'm done smoothing edges just to make people who don't like curves more comfortable. 'Cause love, real love, isn't quiet. Doesn't always fit into pastel picture frames or Christmas card filters. Sometimes it's loud and wild and healing. And a little bit feral in the best way. So here we are, one full year after being called a phase at a $19 fruit bowl brunch. And now I wake up next to a man who never once asked me to be smaller. Who defended me not because I needed rescuing, but because he realized staying neutral was hurting me more than helping his family dynamic. I'm not battling in-law drama every week anymore. We set our boundaries and life kept moving. And maybe that's the thing I didn't expect. How quiet life would feel once I stopped trying to prove myself to people who decided their story didn't have space for me. 'Cause yeah, I fought to be seen. I fought to belong. I cried, I doubted, I over-explained myself to death. But in the end, I walked away with the one thing they never expected me to have. Control over my own narrative. I refused to apologize for existing at full volume. And if that makes me too much, being honest, opinionated, emotional, and passionate makes me a threat, then so be it. Because I'll take being too much over being half-loved ever again. So yeah, thanks for listening. Honestly, if you've been through something similar, if you've ever been labeled as temporary, too bold, too complicated, I want you to know, you're not the problem. You're not too much. You're not a phase. You're the main character. If you like the story, don't forget to like, comment, and consider subscribing. We're stronger when we share. Take care.